So hi everyone, welcome to the session of the MIPIM Connect. The subject today is new forms of hospitality focused on coworking. So we'll be discussing the latest trends in coworking, in the coworking industry, the aftermath of COVID and what the perspectives are for the future, and the latest trends and development in the sector. So with me today, I have three honored and guests, Julian Dufoulon, who's a co-founder and CEO of Fleetdesk, and also based in France, as I am. Jamie Hodari, in French we say we don't need to present you anymore, but you're the CEO and co-founder of Industrious, based in the US. That's a bit earlier on your side of the globe. And Julian Demetz, so you're director of DMFK Architects. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining us in your different parts of the world. I'm Baptiste Broughton. I'm the co-founder of NeoNomad, which is a French co-working aggregator platform. It's a lot of complex words, based in France. So just to start, I'm just going to let our three guests introduce themselves in a few seconds, and then we'll dive in the subject themselves. Julian, do you want to start?
Which one?
Oh yeah, we have two. Sorry, Julian Dufoulon from Fleetdesk.
I'm that one. So I'm Julian Dufoulon, co-founder and CEO of Fleetdesk. Fleetdesk is a workplace management platform used by co-working companies to provide best-in-class experience to their members and to save operations teams time on their daily tasks. Our platform is also used by traditional office, that's the originality of it, traditional office tenants to make their offices more flexible and more welcoming across multiple sites. We are French-based, as Beth said, but with global ambitions. We are a very young company. We launched in late 2019. And we're already working with some of the top co-working brands in France. So we have our own experience as a tech company, but also our clients' experience that gives us a very broad and pretty operational perspective on the industry. Very excited to be here today with Jamie, Julian, and yourself, and hope to provide a bunch of interesting insights for the MIPIM people.
Thanks, Julian. Julian, number two.
Hi, my name's Julian Demetz. I'm a director of DMFK Architects. We're a London-based architecture and interiors practice, doing a lot of workspace across a whole range of sectors, but particularly the co-working sector for many, many years. And we primarily have helped the Office Group, who are a British-based, American-backed company. It have 57 buildings in London, develop their brand. So we did their first ever building, which was probably 12 or 13 years ago, and we've sort of helped them evolve their brand as they go. We also work for a lot of other types of office provider within London, people like Derwent London, and in particular kind of observing the convergence of the traditional office providers and the flexible workspace providers into a model that has elements of both worlds. So it's an area that we're very experienced in. Traditionally, as a practice, we were always interested in community within residential schemes and also within workspace schemes. So we're also doing a lot of co-living type projects and try to bring those sorts of values to the work we're doing with the Office Group. We can talk more about it.
Great, thanks. Jamie, quick word.
I run Industrious. We're the largest premium workplace provider in the US. So we have a bit over 100 locations across 55 cities, and we're now beginning our European expansion in earnest. So it's a good time for this panel. And I think probably, among other things, the thing that we're most sort of known for in the US is that we don't sign leases with landlords. We partner with them under hotel style, essentially, management arrangements, which are less common in Europe, but I can give some insight to the state of those conversations right now. My suspicion is those are starting to take off in Europe as they as they sort of have in the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Yeah, it is an angle that we're going to try and follow on this sort of hospitality side of of the business. Just to start with, when I'm with you, Jamie, could you tell us a bit more just from the ground, because you're the co-working operator on this panel, how you lived through this crisis and what the perspectives are, in September or the after lockdown period. How are you living things on the ground there in industrious?
So, because it's a broadly distributed network, things are a little bit different depending on whether you're talking about New York, San Francisco, et cetera. But I think in general, one observation is, if you are going to go back to the office, having a private office of your own is very helpful, particularly if you're in a city that where COVID is a little bit dicier, or where people are otherwise very much not wanting to leave their home. An open floor plan office is a little bit more nerve inducing. So we got a little bit lucky in that sense, because the vast majority of our product is constructed of 1, 2, 3-person offices. We are seeing higher utilization rates than in typical office in the US. I think more thematically, the thing that we're really seeing is companies, let's say we've talked to 5,000 customers since COVID started. My sense is half of those companies are involved in some sort of process of figuring out what a work from anywhere program for their employees would involve. There are very few saying our employees are not going to leave their living room for the next 2 years, but there are a lot saying we're trying to put choice back in employees' hands, a local no commute office if they need that. The ability to come into headquarters a few days a week if they want that, the ability to work from home when they want. And I guess I would finish by saying, in certain ways that's very new. In other ways, that trend, that democratization of real estate, that sort of solving for the engineer salesperson's needs rather than what the CEO thinks is going to be impressive, has been a real, I think, theme for the last 5 years. It's been part of the growth of our industry. And in certain ways, you've just seen an acceleration of that during COVID, but it produces a lot of logistical, complicated sort of needs in order to actually deliver that to a company. And we've been navigating how to actually do that over the last few months.
So what I'm hearing is it's been an opportunity to accelerate a trend that was already there. But when we were talking about it initially, you were saying to me, it's also a bit early maybe for companies to really throw themselves in that model where they're gonna, give the choice, or put the sort of the choice in the hands of their actual employees right now. Are you seeing this?
What we've seen is, like, if you're a small company and you say, let's act. I can't be in my living room anymore. I need a place to move out of. If you're a local team of a Fortune 500 or a big global business, but this choice is in your hands, your Heineken's Atlanta office, or Pfizer's, Dallas office, and you can choose, there are a lot of people that are already making decisions. For the big centralized decisions, if Airbnb's head of workplace or Merck's, CFO is deciding to restructure the way they deliver their employees' workplace, if they're deciding to move to a distributed model where employees get to choose where to go and they have to stand up offices in 20 new cities, and that's an enormous and very complicated proposition. There are very few companies that have sort of they're all in what comes next mode. There's a few notable examples that have already figured out their plan and started acting, but the vast majority of businesses are in sort of like planning and conceptualizing mode, and I suspect are still a few months away from effectuating those plans.
And the change management side of things is big as well. Thanks for that, Jamie. Julian, sorry, from Fleet Desk and on the French market, what are you seeing as trends that are coming? September, you were saying, we were talking about also the business picking up after lockdown phase, for which France is a bit earlier than maybe the Anglo-Saxon markets. What's your view on the ground?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Jamie said, and I think that the trends you've been describing are, I've noticed them speaking to clients and prospects in the past few months over the summer. The sort of unraveling of the crisis has been pretty typical from our point of view, looking at usage data. There was a massive dip when lockdowns were announced, so our clients were focused on managing clients, managing contracts, and doing damage control financially, avoiding member cancellations, things like that. So we try to help them, provide them sort of guidance on how to implement social distancing, how to reopen offices as quickly as possible. And that actually paid off, because we from June onwards, we started seeing a lot of people, existing members, coming back gradually to the office. Like occupancy rates were back up almost like between 50 and 80%. And as of September, it looks like things are going back to normal. Remote work is not as popular. It was not as popular before COVID in France that it's probably in the rest of the world. And people are kind of back to old habits. But one thing that's for sure is that the forced lockdowns and people having to experience remote work has actually brought a very new type of change that's, for me, is going to be very systematic. Is that the need for to introduce remote working has been pushed by employees themselves. It's not coming from corporate, it's not coming from organizations, it's the employees who are pushing to have at least 1 or 2 days of remote working, and much more freedom to choose, as Jamie says, where they're going to work. So the big thing that came up started coming up over the summer, and clearly is going strong this starting in September, is companies making plans for bringing a much more diversity in their real estate mix. I've had a lot of companies asking to help them make plans towards transitioning with having a bit more of a distributed model with like a head office, some satellite offices, and much more options for employees to work remotely in co-working. I think our perception is that there will be a lot more remote work, but where remote is going to be, I think a lot of it's going to be in co-working. So it was a hard time to go through, but I'm very optimistic overall about the co-working industry. I just think it's going to keep taking an increasing share of the office supply in the coming months and years.
Thanks. Well, yeah, I mean, what we're asking as well is how, during COVID are we going to switch to a sort of full remote working, full sort of working from home model? And what is the need for an office? And seeing the costs of offices, it is a big question. Julian, we were talking about this a bit initially. What's your view on the subject? How's work going to be organized in the next few months, do you think?
I think London, as I see it, is a very particular problem. It's a sort of Europe's mega city. We've got 9 million people here. We're very spread out, and unlike Julian, we're not really seeing as much return to work as you'd expect. I think till recently, some of the co-working providers there are seeing more people come back in, but they've been reporting 5 to 10% occupancy. I think a lot of London people have been priced out of the centre of town. They live in a long commute outside of the centre of London, and they're enjoying themselves living in Winchester and St Albans, and they don't particularly want to be that person getting up at 5:45 and standing on a freezing cold platform. So I feared for a little while for central London market, but then all the trends that were being set up before to do with the things that this is about, which is about hospitality, about the sort of range of services that are on offer from the main providers. I mean, TOG have been moving more and more towards a sort of hotel level of service to their tenants, are the things that I think people are going to start missing and are starting to miss. I mean, if I just take my own office, you know, we work in a vocational educational environment where people train on the job and they need to hear and learn by osmosis. So I think to suggest that everyone can all just work from home forever, I think ignores a big part of the human spirit. You know, I think people need to be together and they need to work together. That said, you know, two very valuable comments that have been made about flexibility is how I see the key, what the key of it is going to be. You know, people being given flexibility to work in a different place. I mean, they keep talking about hub and spoke. I don't personally, for London, see that you know, a central London-based hub could have two spokes, because it's the talent base is so broadly spread around the city that, you know, you'd want to get the best talent and they could live miles and miles apart. So I see it's more likely to be people working in their local co-working spoke environment, which is near where they live. And even that, although I was feeling a little bit negative about that, and then I went away on the weekends to this place in London called Birch, which is kind of a hotel. You might go, and it's at a country club. They might have they haven't got a pool yet, but they might, you know, they might have yoga and bread baking and all of these other things that you could include into the model, but there's also co-working there. So the option to do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in your hub in the center of town, then go to this place, stay the night with your wife or with your kids, work Friday, go to a class, you know, work a bit of Saturday, stay overnight Sunday, work Monday, and then, you know, that flexibility I can see is a real possibility, and it's the first time I'd ever really seen that kind of model really working. So definitely the concentration that the office group that we work for a lot have got on wellness, on providing things that you just can't get at home, better showers, better gym, better classes, better restaurant, all that other stuff is key to their offer. And then I think that the other thing that's been fundamental to all of our clients, obviously we're architects, is design. The really best design places that are really people focused are the ones that are going to attract the best clients, that are really beautifully designed and really thought through very well. So overall, I'm very optimistic that human spirit will win out. People will want to be together for the better part within central hubs within CBDs, but they will require more flexibility at the beginning and the end of their days. Let's say the commute gets softened, and at the beginning of the end of their weeks, and they can maybe then go to local hubs for that. So I'm seeing a little bit of that going on in London. And then the other thing, just to finish, most of the buildings we're doing for the office group, they may sound like co-working, but 70% of the space is demised, let space with your own front door key. And we're seeing a real convergence so our, say, Derwent London and all of our traditional office providers are starting to produce ready-to-go, fit-out offices with your own front door key, which would sort of reinforce what Jamie said about having security of your own tenure and your own red line of where your office is, and the flexible office providers who normally provided a fairly basic private office are starting to really up their game in terms of the readiness to go of their private offices as well. So those two worlds are sort of converging a bit as well. So really, I think the emphasis has been on the co-working provider taking the responsibility for providing the best quality fit out to the end user, and very little work doing the work for the tenant, rather than the tenant having to really spend any money, or, you know, it's about being ready to go to move in, and also to sort of allow people to create different types of working experience. So one might be in the country club, one might be in the CBD where you meet all of your colleagues, but it's sort of flexibility is what I feel it might be moving towards.
Yeah, we coming back to always to this thing of, you know, choice and you know, giving as much choice as possible, and sort of trusting, I guess, employees to make the right decision to, you know, where and how they want to work, instead of giving them just one option and before it was, commute, as you said, the hours to the central office, and then sit in a bit of a austere type of workspace. Jamie, on this hub and spoke thing, it's a word that, it's a concept that's been quite spreading a bit in the past few weeks at least I think in the UK. I'm not really sure about the US. Is it something that you're working on as well at Industrious? Is it something that rings a bell, or has it a different name in in the US? I mean, what's your view on this?
The only other name I've heard for it is city as campus, which is slightly different, but similar concept, that London is the campus, the corporate campus, and you have 7 different outposts. And we've over the years, we've had a lot of users, when we would get to 5, 6, 7, 10 locations in a city, the presumption was a vanishingly small number of companies would actually then take advantage of that. And a much higher percentage than we anticipated did. For a lot of people, either it's a hub and spoke model in a very rigid sense, or it's our main headquarters are going to be in the northern suburbs of Atlanta. But if you go downtown for a meeting, God forbid you have to go back up an hour north again just to work for 2 hours and then come back into the city an hour later for your 4 p.m. meeting. And so people did, not so much by election of their employer, but voting with their own feet, started to sort of use this city as campus network level way of using an office. And now, of course, instead of employees sort of pushing for it, now you're having companies starting to use that language and say, what would it look like to put together a formal program? I think the thing I would note is it would be extraordinarily expensive for a company to take 20 different dedicated offices of their own and then have those sit empty on days where none of their employees go in to their Westchester office, for example. And so really the only cost-effective way to put in place a program like that is one where you actually price by utilization. And you say, look, on days where 40 of your employees go into the New Jersey office, they all sign up on Sunday night. There's going to be, whatever, 4 10-person offices or 10 4-person offices or 1 40-person office, but there's going to be an office for them that day. On the days when 3 people go in, there's going to be a 3-person office for them. And then you'll pay based on that. Most utilization-based kind of network outsourcing type industries like this, in the end, that's the way they price. It's just so different from the way people have paid for real estate until 6 months ago. It's so different from the legacy market sort of constructs and the fundaments of how buildings are valued and the way that people in real estate and CFOs think of how to contract for space. It's pretty progressive, and I think companies, I've been shocked by the number of companies in the last 6 months that have signed up for, we have a branded name for it, but essentially on-demand subscription programs for real estate, because it's pretty quirky.
If I jump in on that,
go for it.
Yeah, if I might jump in on that one, I've from the technology point of view, I've started having this type of requests from some of our clients trying to, who have many locations that they are able to offer their employees, and you also know a little bit about that, Baptiste. It's definitely a bit of a challenge to make sure that you provide the infrastructure for people to find an available space, be able to account for it, bill for it, make sure that you have enough supplies, but not too much, in order not to have not to pay for too many seats in satellite offices, and avoid oversizing your real estate mix. We've had a lot of requests for that, and it poses a strong technological challenge. And that we started invested a lot in R&D to fix it, but I can tell you it's not like it's not a couple of features that could churn out like that with a few days of developer hours.
Yeah,
the problem in our experience is as much digital as it is physical and sort of real world. If anything, maybe the more complicated problems end up presenting themselves on the digital end. I think that's right.
Yeah, because you have situations where you're blending in a lot of different solutions where you could have your hub, as you said, in the central business areas, and then you'll have spokes or on-demand workspace elsewhere, and then you have to be able to track utilization through all these types of engagements, which isn't simple. Is this so? I think the whole hub and spoke is a very big subject in itself. We could probably have a whole whole webinar on it, and it's definitely one of the big trends, at least that's being discussed at the moment. So I think people who will be watching this session should definitely have a look at what's being written at the moment on the subject. It's very interesting and very lively discussion happening at the moment in the community. The other topic that we brushed a bit on in the introduction is the question of hospitality. So is co-working hospitality? Is hospitality going towards a co-working model? Maybe so I don't know who wants to start on this subject. Maybe Jamie, if you have a little view, and maybe Julian, you can complement afterwards. But did you think that's the future of the co-working model, more hospitality, and sort of coming in where maybe the traditional office space was failing?
Yeah, I should say I think the office group is among, if not the best in the world at this. So I'm curious to hear Julian's point of view. I would say yes. That having been said, we do find that with customers, hospitality is a bit of a cipher. You sell benefits, not features, and hospitality is a bit of a feature. To say to a customer, you're going to get hospitality in the office, it's not clear to them what that means. How's that going to impact my day? And so what you're going to the world and saying is that you should be handing off your employees' workplace experience to us. And it's not just that you're going to have a built out space instead of having to do it yourself. It's not just that the couch is going to be pretty or that the demising wall is going to be well constructed, but rather that we are going to be on the hook for delivering your employees' workplace experience instead of you doing it yourself. And that's the biggest distinction from the historical way of solving workplace needs. And that, of course, if you dig under the surface, that is a hospitality proposition. You are on hook for the food and beverage, for the events, for what it feels like to walk into work every day. But that's the way you sell it. The hospitality is the input, and the way you sell it is you're going to have more productive, more engaged, happier employees if you let us do this for you. And you can hold our feet to the fire. And if you don't see those gains, you should kick us to the curb and move to a different provider. But the engine of that is in part sort of functional design and in part the hospitality layer that sits on top of it.
I'd completely agree with that. I mean, obviously we're not providing the hospitality; we're just designing it, but we're evolving the product as we go. And TOG, they always said there were two things that were key to their business. One was, to try and be the boutique hotel of the office world. So that would imply hospitality. And the other one that was that design was at the absolute center of their values. So really great design and creating an environment where you feel special. So I totally agree with Jamie. Yeah, it becomes completely the role of the co-working provider to create that atmosphere and to provide the requisite services. I refer to the one that really caught my eye that I knew nothing about, which is actually run by the Ace guys from the Ace Hotel in London. They've set up this thing, Birch, and I don't know whether it's a happy accident or whatever, but they've created a hotel which is where the spaces really become blurred with one another. So, I mean, something that we've been working on with TOG talking about quite a lot is how a meeting room, for example, for one minute it could be a meeting room, then it could be a dining room, then it could be become a flat, then it become a cookery demonstration area, all these different things. And at this place that I went to, Birch, they're doing kind of doing that. You eat breakfast from the hotel in this space, then it becomes a co-working space. Then the meeting rooms all start getting used, and then all of a sudden by the evening it's a club. And they the way that is manipulated and managed is very much on the plate of the provider, and supplemented by design. But I thought there was a really interesting evolution of the idea of some form of a spoke. I don't know if I like the word, but for me, the idea that people would have regional extra versions of their office that are not in the central business district, sort of like you said, Jamie, is clearly going to be very costly, and also potentially design-wise would have less wonder than the space in the centre of town. But this had something else, you know, it's got space and trees and gardens and land, and, you know, you can go and do some gardening for an hour in the middle of your day or whatever it might be. And given that wellness and these special experiences you can have within your workplace have become, you know, the sort of selling point of a lot of these co-working spaces, you know, the potential for out of town or town fringe locations with more land, for example, to provide other kinds of experiences that city centres could never provide is quite interesting. You know, I guess the closest I could liken this thing to is like a country club where you could go work as well. So it was kind of it was interesting. It took me aback, actually. I wanted to not like it, but I really liked it.
I just looked it up on Google, and it looks amazing and is making me very depressed about American style suburban sprawl, because to have something that looked like that in New York, you'd have to drive 2.5 hours out of the city, but it sounds like that's 30 minutes from central London or something like that.
Unless, of course, it's a cult. I don't know, but it was really mad, and it's got a nice vibe to it. But you can understand, you know, it's to sit at home on the dining table. I don't believe that's going to be that's not the way forward. I can see why a lot of people are saying, well, I'm enjoying this. It's nice. It's, you know, I get to eat nice lunch and bake my own bread and stuff. But long term, people want to be together, either in sort of the hub location. So I guess, I suppose the other thing I was going to touch on was quite a lot of the providers, like I said before, are providing ready-to-go office spaces, you know, and I think the design of those ready-to-go office spaces is changing. You know, it's not just a load of desks and a meeting room. You know, they're taking some of the elements of the communal co-working areas and putting them within the demised space, so foam booths and focus booths and much better kitchens and stuff, all within the demise. So, and then I think that will evolve as these hubs become places where it's education, or where it's where space specifically for group activity, where people do come together. And then when people are out and working at home, maybe they've got membership of local co-working places, and, you know, they're finding a different experience on those other days, or in the first 2 hours of the day, or the last 2 hours of the day, or however that happens. So, yeah.
Julian, are you do we get a free drink if we come to this place, you know, coming from you, or are you?
I don't own it. I just went there. But TOG are moving in that direction.
Okay, yeah, but it's true that, I mean, hotels have been great places to work from. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just saying, well, the product that we're providing for people like TOG in central London is more akin to a hotel, and in terms of hospitality anyway. And but again, also they're very building focused as well. So they don't have a standard product it's printed across all their buildings. They look at the building and the area and the clientele for that area and provide the appropriate product for that area and for that building.
Well, I think one point on that, I think, is that, you know, people, I think, overestimate the sort of like, this is all about Zoom and technological solutions that enable you to work from wherever. And I think underestimate how much, you know, 30 or 40 years ago, if you went to an architect's office, there's big drafting tables, and an accountant's office has green lampshades, and, you know, different professions had different physical requirements. I used to be a corporate lawyer, and you had to go, you know, like it was the last gasp when you would go to the law library. So you couldn't be a law firm without a physical law library. And there's this mushing together of different types of white collar work, so that it all looks the same. You walk into an accounting office or an architecture office or a SaaS sales office, and they're all the same. I think that's part of what's powered saying, well, you know, if all work just looks like a person sitting at a table, then it could be a person sitting at a table in a beautiful, not to get back on Birch again, but in a beautiful birds chirping, you know, trees out of your window farm outside of London. Anyway.
Yeah, that's, you know, the whole point of for me, the Zoom thing, I don't know, I was saying to Baptiste earlier, there was a thought for the day on Radio 4 where this rabbi said, when two people come sit in the same room as each other, their hearts synchronize. And I think that people need to be together, and I think that's a basic human requirement, and the sort of 2D communication can only go so far. That's why I remain optimistic that these, people will realize that, and home working won't go on for, won't be a sort of a permanent fixture for everybody.
Yeah. I think everyone's, it's the same in France. The subject is, where do you put the, where do you find your balance? And sometimes it's every team or every company that will have different, strike a different balance. We're in a stage where this can be redefined, which is quite extraordinary, and quite, quite, in a way, even if it's all very negative, quite a positive thing to see, to think that you'd be at the forefront of that when it happens. Julian, even if it's a bit more on the technology side, what's your view on this? We discussed a bit about, hospitality and maybe new services that you're seeing your clients trying to get on the platform. Is it also maybe a sign that they're moving towards this sort of model?
Yeah, definitely. It was at the moment, the request is starting to be, the request is to have one single platform to make it easy for employees to find where they're going to work. So yeah, there's definitely some requests on the part of clients to help them put in place the decentralized model. For co-working companies, I totally agree with what Jamie said earlier. It's as much a legal, contractual, organizational, physical problem than it is a digital one. But there's expectation that a technology provider would be able to facilitate transition towards a decentralized model. And I also agree that there's probably a need on the market for products like the ones you guys do at NeoNomad, providing a sort of single path to be able to access various locations, and for companies to have a centralized space to manage their subscriptions and all their workspaces. As I said earlier, it's definitely a massive challenge, and we have to factor in the remote work from home aspect of it, because if we're going to balance supply and demand for space, make sure that employees always find the space they need for the specific work they want to do, we need to be able to factor in the fact that some employees won't need any of that at some point. So it's definitely a problem we look at and try to factor in. I'm totally aligned with Jamie and Julian on the idea that I don't think working from home is going to become a massive trend. I think it's just a temporary thing, and that there were a few very strong announcements by large American tech companies about moving everyone remotely. But I think it was more opportunistic than anything, and it's not going to be a sort of generalized trend. So that makes the technical challenge interesting for us. Means that we have to account for this diversity of available workspaces, make sure we provide employees a simple place to access them all, and make sure that we provide companies a simple way to manage this complexity.
Thanks. Little change of subject. Now we talked about space utilization and the balance in the mix that we're going to find, and this whole hospitality side of the market. On the space design phase, Jamie's, well, and Julian's also a question for you, but what are the impacts of COVID and in the way that spaces are actually organized within coworking? Is there any, or are we just going back to sort of a normal way of designing spaces? How's that been factored in?
For me, or
yeah,
Jamie, sorry.
Look, I think there's, to tie in this question about technology, I think there is a more complicated way of running a workplace that is on the cusp of happening, where instead of saying you have your dedicated space for your company with a few conference rooms, and then you go out and go to a shared cafe to get a coffee, the shared spine of amenities that you're integrated into within a building is much more robust. So you're this concept of you both have a distributed network across cities, and then you have distributed spaces within a building. That requires, to this technological point, your whole workday to be mediated through an app. It has to say at 2 p.m. you're in focus room 6, and at 4 p.m. you're 4 floors down in this shared meeting room, and at 5 p.m. you're in drinks on floor 11 or whatever it is, and the elevator should be waiting for you, you know, based on that, rather than so that there isn't as much friction as there would be now trying to live that workday distributed across a series of buildings or a series of spaces within a building. That is, I think, the fundamental reason why, like, the app has to work, the access to physical space has to work, or else you're kind of, you know, you're in trouble. But if you're going to do that, that means instead of a big open floor plan space where 150 employees work in a benching situation, you would have, you know, essentially lots and lots and lots of purpose-built functional rooms that people move throughout their day. 50 focus rooms, 50 one-on-one meeting rooms, 50 4-person meeting rooms, etc. And so I think the end result would be less open floor plan space, more private spaces, and even for individual companies, a move away from the 40-person open floor plan space to lots and lots and lots of smaller ones.
Julian, do you want to add something? Yep.
Well, I very quickly, I'd agree with that. I think that there's no doubt design density was a massive goal before. The densities were getting higher and higher, and now they're just going to drop down. Flexibility, like Jamie said, is the key. So we've always, across all of our co-working space projects, tried to use every sort of inch of the building. So corridors aren't just corridors, they're places you can drop and sit down. You know, you've got 15 different options within a building to go and find a place to be quiet, whether that's within your demise or within shared space. And similarly, our providers, so TOG, if you've got a choice of 50 something buildings across the town, and you feel like your building's a bit busy that day, just go to the other one. You know, and I think combined, as Jamie said, with technology, you know, that it's a believable thing to do, that you can sort of say, well, I know that building's got less people in it today, so I'm going to go to that one. But yeah, the main thing is flexibility, and just and I guess the last thing I would say is, you know, lots of people are talking about this at the moment, and lots of people are positing views as to what the future is going to be, and the answer is no one knows. So flexibility is the only thing that we can really provide for our clients and their clients for their tenants, and being reactive. So yeah, in design terms, we will continue to do what we were already doing, and that's just giving people as many different options for work as possible, which actually wasn't driven by COVID. It was just driven by being able to sit in a different chair every other hour and feel a different feeling, and look off a roof 1 minute, sit in a garden another minute, and be in a boardroom the next minute. And that's the sort of richness of what this sector has provided. And so I'm still very optimistic for the sector, because it's the one that's got the most ideas, and the one where you've just got a reception area, some meeting rooms, and then a demised space is less interesting and in my opinion less attractive. So I feel very good about this sector's ability to respond to this problem.
Thanks, Julian. We're coming up to the time, so is there anything you want to add as a conclusion? Any words? Feel free.
I was just gonna say, like, one of the positive aspects of lockdown and people having to work remotely for a good amount of time is that they've probably, if they hadn't before, realized that going back to a jam-packed open floor plan is just not going to be an option anymore. And to go along with what Jamie and Julian were just saying, I think there won't be going back, and open floor plans were already criticized by most employees before. Now they're just not an option for them.
Yeah, I think you're right, and thanks a lot. And I think we see this trend is here to stay. We, as you said, co-working industry is probably the best imagined solutions. We talked about choice. We talked about the blending in hospitality. We talked about trying to wrap it up all into, you know, a good, robust technological solution, which is a big challenge as well, and pricing it properly, which is something that we haven't discussed here, but you know, that is obviously at the core of everything. Thanks a lot for those insights, and I think yeah, the challenges are there, so let's get to work. Thanks a lot, guys, for your input, and thanks for the MIPIM for the organization. And if you need to reach out to us, I think we're all online and available. So have a great day.
You too.
Thanks,
you.
Thank you.
guys.
Bye.